Hello, I'm the Smoking Cheddar, but you probably already knew that. Today, the unit build, we're going to be tackling my favourite build for the MBT. This also translates well for a helicopter, and it's pretty dangerous. It's a critical strike build. So what is it we need? We need a all-rounder damage. This is going to be something that's good in defense. It's going to be good in offense. It's going to be good for AG donors. It's going to be good for ratting units, pop-out attacks, but more importantly, it's going to be good at sustained fighting, because the longer you can fire uninterrupted, the more damage you can do, and we're going to stack that damage as time goes on. Now, this is a build that you would have already seen. There's no way you would not have seen this. This is a build that is most certainly already out there, but regardless, you've definitely seen it in the L4, and you probably already have it yourself. I give you the Berserker. Okay, starting with the main gun, we have only one option to choose from, and that is firepower and load time. Both of which we're actually going to need, so keep that in mind. Engine's going to give us troop speed and HP. Armour, we do have options here. We have sloped and HP, or we have sloped and blast MIP. We're going to need sloped and HP for this one. And for slot 4, we're going with the good old-fashioned firepower. So let's take a look at the unit information, and here we have the main battle tank unit information, and we can see for the camp bonus we get faster production, we get enhanced firepower, and we get reinforced armor. Now these are actually all things we're going to need, because all three of these things play very heavily into field play, all three of them. The sloped armor is going to make it harder for other tanks and helicopters to attack you. The extra firepower is what we're going to be using to leverage some of the mechanics when we get to the officers, which we'll have a look at. And the rapid production always comes in handy. So as always with the tech, we are looking at advanced as we've got to the end of the tree, but not necessarily completed the tree, and then we will look at modern as if we've got to halfway and we're working our way back towards the start of the tree. So what do we want out of this tree? Well, you've probably already guessed the sort of things we're going to be after here, so let's just skip to the end. This is going to be key for our build because it gives us a base critical strike rate of 5% and increases the critical strike damage by 50%. It's already at 150, so this brings the critical strike damage up to 200. But we get a base rate of 5%, and that is where we are going to be making a start on this build. So when I said this thing is going to hit hard and it's going to hit often, now you know. Now obviously we get these two to level 10 anyway in order to get that, so what else should we pick up? Well, pen damage is obviously going to be useful, as this is going to be fighting other tanks and helicopters. It's also going to be fighting artillery and things where this is not going to get used, but we're not really interested in the ifs, buts and maybes. We're interested in like just pumping out damage, and tank pen damage is kind of useful. We're not too bothered about the firing accuracy, if I'm honest. Load time reduction, we do need this maxed out as quickly as possible. The HP bonus is nice, but it's not necessary. This is going to be key to the build as well, and obviously we need to get it unlocked in order to get to the end of the tree. It increases the firepower by 15% for 4 seconds upon entering combat. That is going to be extremely important for us, as we are going to be utilizing the critical strike mechanic and the load time reductions. So that's quite important. Tank damage resistance when being attacked by other tanks is also going to be fairly important. Not necessarily the other two, the artillery and the infantry one, but this one is going to be important. The idea is that we're going to be able to use this to attack other tanks with great effect. We also want to pick up the damage intensity for all three, but if you can't get all three, you definitely still need the tank one. And while the tank HP is nice, it is not necessary. The tank firepower is almost certainly necessary. Let's go and have a look at the modern tree. So starting off at the middle of the tree and working backwards towards the start, the ETC guns gives us a 40% chance to gain 5% additional firepower bonus for 5 seconds that can stack up to 3 times. So we get up to 15% additional firepower, which is going to be incredibly nice. And because we're looking to constantly cycle shots through the gun, we're going to keep having this buff pop off, which is kind of where I said at the start we're looking for a sustained fighter here. We're not looking for something that's going to be ending its engagement in about 2 seconds. We want it to not get hit, but if it does get hit, we can replace it quickly, and we want to constantly pump out shots. Again, tank damage resistance when being attacked by tanks is very nice. Tank garrison recovery rate. Now, I'm going to say this is actually kind of important for what we're doing with this build, because if we are going to use this as a independent tank, or even if we're going to donate it, either way, the recovery rate for what is going to be a very active unit will be nice, because even if you aren't donating this to an AG, being able to do pop-out attacks, that garrison recovery rate is going to really help in pop-out attacks. It's going to really help when you go out and rat, and it's just going to be generally just a really good thing to have. We do have tank HP, but it's not important to max this out, but it is nice if you do it. But the tank firepower is kind of important. We do need this maxed out. This is also going to be important for getting this maxed out, because it is an intensity bonus while being garrisoned, and we're looking for an all-rounder, so the tech needs to reflect that. This will also need to be maxed out, as we are going to take advantage of the fact that we are going to be penetrating helicopters as well as light tanks and other MBTs. Tank training speed is going to be incredibly important. HP is nice but not necessary, but again, the firepower is. This build is going to be a pure crit build, so we're going to be working off the auto attack, the normal attack damage, being able to utilize that to generate critical strikes. But more importantly, we're then going to layer that with this officer. So why do we want Rapier first as the captain? And it's very simple with all these builds. As always, we're looking at them being awakened and what we can get out of the awakened officer. And here, once he's awakened, as you can see, it upgrades Unsheath the Reaper, which is a enhanced skill from Animosity, which is this one here, which is a critical strike and damage intensity. So what does this skill do once it is awakened? Whenever this officer's tank or helicopter troop lands a critical strike with its normal attacks, increasing its damage intensity by 5% for 8 seconds. This effect can stack up to 5 times. At max stacks, the troop deals additional skill damage whenever it lands a critical strike, damage coefficient 400. This effect can be triggered once every 4 seconds. There was a mistake there. Did you spot it? Now, that's pretty awesome. But we could have him as the aide. But why do we want him as the captain? Well, he has a very high critical strike rating. This special skill, for example, gives us 20% critical strike rating and a 15% normal attack boost. However, as always, the captain fires first, followed by the aide. So if he fires first, what happens? Well, deals damage to an enemy, damage coefficient of up to 1500. If this officer is in a tank or helicopter troop, it increases the chance of landing a critical strike with normal attacks by 20%. So we have a 20% critical strike from his skill, and if this pops off, he gets another 20%, which means we're at 40% plus the 5 for the base skill through the tech. So once this has popped off, just from this officer alone, we are using a 45% chance that a normal attack is going to be a critical strike. So let that sink in for a second, because that is insane. Moving on over to not that one, this one. We get a 30% firepower bonus. Now, obviously, it goes up by an extra 20 if he is in a light tank. He's not in a light tank. That is a bit of a waste, and it is a bit of a shame. However, we are going to use a lot of really nifty things in the train skills. Let's have a look quickly. So you'll notice that his train skills are a special and a balanced. Which ones have we chosen and why? Well, we've gone for a critical strike rating from Golden Eagle, which gives us an additional 10%. I think that speaks for itself, really, doesn't it? And we've gone for dual dominance as the train skill, because this is not specifically linked to artillery, even though it comes from an artillery officer, but we get a skill boost buff of 15%. As I said in my amendment, this is indeed including the tactical skills, passive skills, awaken skills, and conquest skills. This is basically a damage booster for this. This works on this. So we're going to get an additional 15% damage every time that critical coefficient lands, which, as I remind you, is 400. So 15%, that's kind of nice. Anyway, that's the captain, who is the aide. Naturally, if you're going to have a critical strike build, it is these two together, because why? Well, the reason why is she's 15% damage. She's a 15% critical strike rating. Now, once you've tallied all of those critical strike ratings up, the tech, the bonus 20%, the skills, the trained skill, and this, you have a 70% chance that your normal attack is going to be a critical strike. In other words, you have a 1 in 3 chance that your normal attack is just a normal attack. 2 in 3 chance that you're going to get a critical strike, which is why we're stacking firepower. And that's the reason, part of the reason why we wanted her. I mean, we could have trained this skill in and used Golden Eagle, but what makes her more important than Golden Eagle? Well, once she's awakened, she gets a utility rather than a damage increase on her tactical skill. Now, we could have gone with the Golden Eagle option and trained that critical strike in from 15%, and we could have got target, damage, resistance, ignore, which would have been good. It would have been very good. In fact, there's nothing wrong with swapping the two officers around and doing it that way around. Personally, I would rather have the speed reduction on the opponent, the speed increase on us, and the damage intensity increase on us, because that just sounds pretty nice, if I'm perfectly honest. Other than that, you know, it's a flip of the coin. Which one would you rather have? And to be perfectly honest, if you are looking at this build right now and you have Golden Eagle awakened and you have Rapier awakened, then that's probably the way you should do it rather than this way round, but if you have Lady of Justice and Rapier Awakened, then you can do it this way round. Basically, you've got 3 officers to choose from, and the combination therein is not actually a bad combination. It's not a bad combination either way you look at it, but you are looking at having a 70% critical strike rating by using these 3 officers, one having the trained skill one training the critical strike skill and one utilizing their awakened ability and critical strike damage on top of that. Personally, like I said, I'd rather have her on the tank, but that is personal preference. What else does she bring to the table? Well, she does bring this to the table, which is a 30% firepower buff. The trained skills. We've gone for a firepower and HP buff, and we've gone for a 20% firepower buff, but this is while an additional 5% while in active alliance territory, so that goes up to 25%. So it works pretty much the same as this skill, which is an additional 5% while in active alliance territory as well, which is handy for pop-out attacks if you are defending your base, or if someone is driving past your base, or you get the idea. You know, you can utilize the additional 10% that you would otherwise not have access to. And that's pretty much all the officers. So let's just have a quick reminder of what firepower does for tanks. And as you can see here, it increases the basic damage, it increases the firing rate of the unit, and it also increases the accuracy, which is why I said I'm not too fussed if you pick up the accuracy or not, because we are stacking firepower rather than damage intensity, which is going to affect all 3 of those stats, which is quite nice indeed. And basic damage, when it's getting multiplied by 200% and you have a 70% chance in order to do that, that's what we're looking for. That's exactly what we're looking for. Damage intensity is nice, don't get me wrong, but we're not utilizing that mechanic here. We're specifically utilizing the basic damage and the critical strike damage of that basic damage. That is why we're stacking firepower so high, and that is why I said we're not really too fussed if we have the damage intensity or the damage resistance bonuses. Ignore damage resistance bonuses from Golden Eagle, but we do have a slight advantage by a total of 10% with this build in firepower additional if we are in active alliance territory as a result. The more you know. So what is the summary for this main battle tank? Well, as you can see, we're going to be utilizing very heavily the critical strike mechanic within the game. We've managed to pump up that stat very high. Now bear in mind that is only 70% once the captain pumps off his tactical skill. The rest of the time that is going to be 20% lower. That is 50% critical strike rating. 20% less is 50. That's 1 in every 2 shots is going to be a critical strike, and that is going to be 200% of unit normal damage. I don't know how else to tell you that that's quite dangerous, especially on an MBT. You got to remember, we've chosen the Vanguard MBT here, which has got the highest amount of firepower, which is something we are leveraging further. We've got 2 techs, pictured techs, which give us an increase in firepower that is stackable. We've got multiple techs in the tech tree, which increases the firepower even further. We've gone for the slot 4 in the units in the unit part list as firepower, and we've trained in firepower and HP as well as firepower as a percentage on the unit, and we have selected 2 officers that give us firepower and critical strike. the idea with this tank is that you probably use it in conjunction with something else. So maybe you've got a main battle tank that has a shield. That can go out first and this can come up second. The shield one takes damage, this one deals it. If it's sitting in the base, it's going to be dealing damage. Remember, sustained attacks, constantly firing. We want the guns on these tanks constantly firing. Why? Because they're going to constantly provide critical strikes. The more attacks we can deal, the more critical strikes we can deal, and the more often we're going to see results through that. It is very, very, very vicious. We will compare at 8.1, the MBT is a 1.27 mil firepower and a 1.51 for the helicopter. So if you did want this on the helicopter, you could totally put this on the helicopter and it would be even more dangerous. So as I said, don't think that you have to follow these builds 100%. That is never the case. These builds are always there to help you think and plan what you are wanting to do with your statues, and I hope that's helped this week. So I've been the Smoking Cheddar and you've been very patient. Thank you very much for watching, and there will be a link to the Discord in the description box down below. If you do decide to join the Discord, please remember to read the rules, the top. Every time I release a video, at least 2 people or at least 1 person will click on that link and then not read the initial rules, and then they just don't end up in the main server. There is a bot there to prevent other people from botting into the server. Anyway, look, it's the middle of summer, guys. It's hot out there. Go drink a drink. I know I didn't tell you to put your headphones on at this today, get a drink or get a snack, because it's hot. I'm tired. I don't care. You don't care. It's the end of the video. Just go outside, go sweat in a pool somewhere, or just don't go for a bike ride. Don't be a dick.